You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast hosted by Matt Franks and Zach Bechtold. We hope you enjoy this week's show, and you can find out more about us by going online at beardedtheologians.com, where you can pick up a few t-shirts, listen to a few old episodes, and find ways that you can connect with us. Thank you for listening. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And we have, I think, friend of the podcast is a fair introduction. But we have a special long time, most guest appearances on the podcast thus far. Our friend, our podcast colleague now at this point, fellow bearded person, Matt Rawle with us today.
What is up, gentlemen?
Thanks for being on, man.
Absolutely. And yeah, friends is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, close
seems like a
acquaintance.
stretch of the word.
I mean, do I answer your Facebook Messenger? Sometimes.
Sometimes.
It depends.
Have you blocked my cell phone number? Not yet. Coming.
Not yet.
It's coming.
Not yet. I mean,
it's coming.
Depends. Depends on how the summer works out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
that's
July
right.
4th,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Would love to, one of these days, capitalize on a good Colorado Rockies July 4th.
You should.
Something or other.
Got a
It's
couple
worth it.
tickets left, man. You can come down.
Working on it.
Also,
But yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for
Denver Comic
lowering your bar again, so that I might walk over it.
It's not a far stretch. Well, again, we're happy to have you on. Would you remind our listeners, in case they haven't heard you on the podcast before, a little bit about yourself? Who you are, where you're from, what your perfect date is.
Yeah, pina coladas and getting caught in the rain. Elder in the United Methodist Church, serving at Asbury United Methodist Church in Bossier City, Louisiana. Married, 4 children, so never bored. And prayers accepted. I was a senior in high school this year, which is just. I hugged my daughter and said, "Have a good prom," and I thought, what has happened to the last 17 years?
Yep.
I mean, it just never dawned on me that one day I would hug a progeny and say, enjoy prom.
Mm-hmm.
That just never. I don't know why. You think it duh. Once you have a kid, you assume you're ready for all these milestones, but that is not the case. Father of 4, co-founder of the Hub for Innovation, which is everywhere, which is super exciting. Really, it's just really, really, really great of diving into that work. It's been tons of fun, and also writing books because I'm bored. Nothing else to do in the parish.
Right.
So I have this new one on Abraham coming out. It's called Faith Over Fear, Abraham's Imperfect Journey. Because I started looking at this story, and immediately, because I've told, that Abraham is the model of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Look to Abraham, he's the faithful one, father of nations. Father Abraham had many sons. Many sons had father. I don't want to sing the whole thing.
I was going to say, please don't sing more than 10 seconds. We're going to get in trouble.
I don't want you to have to pay a royalty for some Vacation Bible School song from the 90s. But this story, and I'd never really done a deep dive in, I'd done the Binding of Isaac. I've talked to a couple of things, but never really dove into the story as a whole. And my goodness, the story's pretty problematic once you start to dive into it, right? And had never realized that there's this constant thread of the promise at risk in this story. Immediately, okay, so Abraham says, go. Abraham got accepted into Alabama, so God was like, all right, pack up your stuff and go somewhere I'll show you, go to college, go to undergrad. But then, God says to leave everything behind, but not only does Abraham not leave everything behind,
Right.
He brings Lot with him. And it's not that Abraham is like, hey, we have a couple of extra tickets for the Rockies, come along, No, Lot is collateral. Just in case this doesn't work out. I have an heir in the bag. I have a fail-safe in Lot. And from the very beginning, the promise is at risk. And it's not long after that, because now it sounds like it's beautiful. Like Abraham goes and he brings Lot with him, and people say like, I'm not sure that's what God asked you to do, but okay, cool. So, and he goes and he finds himself in the land, and then it says there's a famine in the land. And instead of like staying put and saying, no, but I trust God, you know, I'm down on my knees for Jesus. Like I'm just like, instead of like trusting that this is going to happen, he goes to Egypt, which is something God did not ask him to do. Like people forget about that. And like as he's going into Egypt, he's like, all right, look, babe, you're like really attractive. And when I get into Egypt, Pharaoh's going to kill me so he can take you as a wife. So what if, follow me on this, what if we say that you're my sister instead? And so like if he like takes a liking to you, it's all fine. I'll be fine, right? And that's what happens. He goes into Egypt and he traffics his wife to Pharaoh to save his own skin. And I mean, there's a lot of things to say about that. And one thing in particular is that Pharaoh says, what the heck are you doing? If Pharaoh says that, a Gentile, the king of the Egyptians, like picks up on God's promise and picks up on a level of morality that apparently Abraham didn't see or didn't pay attention to, an outsider. So early in our story, the morality of the outsider influences those on the inside who make mistakes. And I love that aspect of the story, that Pharaoh is like, what are you doing? Like, no, you lied. Like, this is not right. Y'all go and leave. Like, we'll send you with stuff. We're not going to throw you out in the desert like you're about to do for Hagar, but spoilers. We're going to give you provisions, and we're going to send you back. And he does. And I find it fascinating that it is through this Gentile outsider royalty that actually sets Abraham back on course, right? And that's just a reminder of, like, if you're thinking God's activity only happens within the four walls of your local congregation.
Right.
Check the hearing aids, right? Like get a better prescription because God is on the move and might not be from the direction you're assuming it to be. You know, so it's like at the beginning of the book, there's this tension of the promise at risk, and that tension happens through the rest of the cycle. This constant dance between fulfillment and absolute destruction of what God is asking Abraham to do, and it's fascinating to lean into that.
Right. No, and that's such a you talk about the early on stories being so problematic with Abraham. They all are, right? Like they all hold that tension throughout the whole Hebrew Bible in stories of will they, won't they? Are they go to, here's what God's called you to do. We kind of do some of it and then go over here and do our own thing. And
I've heard this, one of my friends, Gene Reeves, God rest his soul, he died several years ago, pastor, a second career pastor, which I think is a kind of faith that supersedes my own, to like be a successful business person and then one day say, you know what, I want to go to seminary.
Right.
Like, have you lost your mind? And he said, I'm convinced that God's most frequently used phrase is, I'm going to have to work with that. I guess I'm just going to have to work with that. You know, and I know the Lord, when I roll out of bed in the mornings, is like, geez, I'm going to have to work through that again. I have to work with that. Oh my God. Like, wait, you're doing a podcast with Franks and Bechtold again?
Yep.
Oh my God, I'm going to work with that.
But I have to work.
Oh my God. And it is true. Like, it happens throughout Scripture. Like, I mean, David started so great, but like his story just completely unravels. Saul started so great, completely unravels. You know, even like Moses got it. Like, oh my God, when Moses is carrying the law as he comes down the mountain. You know, all 15, all 10 commandments. and he sees Aaron with this golden calf, and he's like, oh my gosh. Like, seriously, guy? Seriously, my guy? Like, what do you, so, and I love it, because Moses is like, Aaron, what happened? Aaron's like, I have no idea.
No clue.
Like,
it just got out of hand.
Things got out of hand quickly. It's like y'all at a youth convention, right? They just got out of hand.
Yep.
We can't have them back. And Moses gets mad. He gets real mad. And he's like, okay, grind up the golden calf into dust, put it in the drinking water. He makes everybody drink it. It's like, so my mother used to be a preschool teacher, and when she would catch someone spitting in her class, the punishment was, oh, it looks like you like to spit. She would put the kid in the corner and say, spit until you can't spit anymore.
That's hardcore.
And all of a sudden, spitting became no fun at all, right? Oh, you like spitting? Well, go in the corner and knock yourself out. You just keep doing it. But you can't leave until you're done, right? So Moses puts this has nothing to do with Abraham or the latest book, but it's a great story. Abraham makes them drink the golden calf, and he goes, who's with me? And they all go to this side of the mountain. And who's not with me? And they all go to that side of the mountain. And Moses gives all of his friends swords and says, take them out. We don't often preach that
Right.
In the sanctuary. I've wanted to,
Yep.
like around stewardship season. Like, all right, who's in it to win it?
That's right.
And who's not? Oh, you keep asking for a disaffiliation vote. All right. Okay. Well, let's if you're with me, go to this side of the room. If you're not with me, go to this side of the room. And pass out slingshots. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, let's do this. Look, you want me to be biblical? We're going to be real biblical about this, like right now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm joking. I would never.
Of course.
I've wanted to.
Right.
But I would never.
But we don't let the intrusive thoughts win, right?
That's correct. We take a deep breath, and the law says to go on Sabbath. In Louisiana, when you become a clergy person, you have a retreat at the Abbey. There's a Benedictine monastery in South Louisiana, and the promise is, or the offering. He goes, look, and this is the brother. What was his name? Bernard, I think it was Brother Bernard, had this really great South Louisiana how you mom and them accent, right? So New Orleans has this really great accent, which I can only describe as it's like a Boston accent, but you just took NyQuil. So it's like it's kind of he's like, hey, if you ever wanting to chop someone's head off, just like spend a couple days with the brothers. Just come down, spend a couple days with the brothers, and then go back into ministry. Yeah, and there's this perpetual, beautiful agreement between Methodist and Benedictine, the monks, where look, if you need to work and pray for a little bit before you pass out swords to your friends,
We got you.
we got you. We got you. So
I would say in Moses's defense, he did tell God, anyone else. Please, anyone else.
This is really your fault, Lord.
Yeah.
Like I was clear with my level of expectation
Right.
at the burning bush.
Right.
But I mean, look, this is on you, really.
They said the same
Your
thing
people.
at Zach's ordination.
They did. I said the same thing. Anyone else, please.
Look. And then the board signed off on you.
I
against their
still
better
did
judgment.
I just, so many questions.
Oh my gosh. I remember. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say back to Abraham, and because we want you to talk about the book, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
We want you to sell 3 or 4 more copies.
I mean, I have a kid going to college,
right?
So,
right.
like, if I can sell at least 7,
we'll that's a Taco Bell lunch. It'd be great.
Correct.
But no, I mean that's. We always dig back into these, or maybe not dig back into these stories, but we always have fond memories of our, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Like our Noah stories and these stories that we find throughout the beginning of the Hebrew Bible with such fondness. Like I said, David's story, we have a fondness for David, and yet it unravels very quickly. And but we hold on to the man after God's own heart. We hold on to Abraham and his story. And let go or ignore or gloss over quickly the problematic parts. But this idea of Abraham being on an imperfect journey, I think, is one, it's helpful for me because same journey, right? Just a
Right.
different way. But we hold on to that idea of perfection in such a way that we have to do it this way. We can't stumble and fall. We can't make mistakes. We can't accidentally traffic our wife.
For your own
Things like
benefit, yeah.
for
So
your own
that,
benefit, right?
yeah.
But we all make decisions like that on a daily, but maybe not to save ourselves and traffic our wives, but we all make decisions that are in our interests so that we don't get hurt in some form or fashion. In Abraham, right? Like does some stuff, and yet we think if we stumble and fall, if we make a mistake, oh God, we're straight to the pits of hell for us, right?
Yeah. I mean, perfection can breed paralysis,
Hmm.
right? If you, especially if, like for those blessed souls who are ones on the Enneagram,
Mm,
where they can't move until there's a perfect plan ahead.
yeah.
You know, perfection can breed paralysis. And I think one of the most interesting things about this cycle in terms of perfection and the things that we sometimes gloss over in Abraham's story is entertaining the three visitors, right? There's these three people who come and by the oaks of Mamre, you know, they're under the tent and whatever, and they reveal like in due season, like we're gonna come back and you're gonna have a kid, and Sarah laughs, and one we forget that Abraham laughed as well, but Sarah laughs, and the angels say, "Why are you laughing?" And this is not a chastisement of Sarah. At least I'm convinced it's not a chastisement of Sarah. Because she even said, like, I didn't laugh. Like, no, 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 no. Yeah, you did.
Mhm.
And it's not a, yeah, you did. Like, send it, write up the report. No, it's, you come to the realization, oh my God, Abraham didn't tell her. Abraham so far in this story has not told her about this. Because Abraham wanted either, well, and there's no motivation given. So let me be clear that this is a homiletical leap.
Right.
Could it be that Abraham wanted this promise to come through him solely, a solo hero leader? Because when you flip back, and at least I did, trying to make sense of this story, because like certainly they're not chastising Sarah for laughing and not chastising Abraham for laughing. No, oh my God, I'm realizing, and they are realizing, Abraham didn't tell her. Because even when the episode prior to this with Hagar, Sarah doesn't say, God promised us a kid and God hasn't delivered yet. Go ahead and take Hagar. That's not how the story unfolds. Yeah, she's aware that they don't have a kid, but there's no like God is late on his promise thing. Oh my gosh, did Abraham not tell her? And that seems to be the case because there's this constant. Abraham always has collateral. He brings Lot with him as collateral. Eleazar, his servant in his household, he goes, oh, might it be through Eleazar, right? Ishmael, oh, might my promise be through Ishmael? And it's Abraham is hoping and wishing, and he's praying that because if the promise is through these guys, I don't have to tell Sarah. It'll be done. It's here. It's ready, right? So when these visitors come, I almost like it's like this soap opera, right? Like there's this moment where Abraham's like, oh, there's another clue in the story. So they come, and like Abraham says, hey, Sarah, can you go and get the calf, and can you make some bread, and can you? It's almost as if he's trying to distract when these visitors come by. Like I've got to get Sarah out of the house because they're going to say something.
Right.
Hey, Sarah, can you go? And she does with haste. Like she brings all this stuff. It's like, oh, that happened quicker than I thought it was going to be. Okay, they're still here. Hey guys, what's up? Like you're gonna have a kid, and Sarah's laughing, and Abraham's like, awkward, uh-oh, and then again, shortly after that, we have the cycle of the Akedah and the binding of Isaac, and it's almost as if Abraham and Sarah never speak after that. There's some real tension. There's some real tension in this story. Anyway, so all that to say, and yet God patiently worked through Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. It doesn't condone their activity, but it does speak to the patience of the Almighty when God is calling us to be on the move. for what God is calling us to do and to become.
Right.
So you're saying God actually has patience with us, even
More than
when
mine.
even when we stumble or mess up. You think about that, like, what does grace in motion look like for you? Like, as you think about that, as you think about the story,
Gosh.
how God works in those spaces. I like how you said, like, God looks at us every morning, like, I guess this will do.
Yes, I got to work with that.
that.
Matt's putting his thinking cap on again. I guess I got to give him space to think. That's a really good question.
Yeah, it should say Chat GPT underneath, just in case.
Speaking of collateral, of always having a fail-safe.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I haven't written the stewardship letter in at least a year and a half. So let me peek behind the curtain on ChatGPT. What does grace in motion look like? That is a super question. I appreciate that question very much. My immediate answer, and if I had more time to think about it, I would perhaps say something different. But being a dad for me is a perpetual exercise in grace in motion. My kids are lovely, and my wife and my kids are lovely, and they're good kids, and they're great, and yet there are sometimes where I have to take a deep breath. Like my oldest is going off to college, and now that I have this experience of my oldest going off to college, the story about the Garden of Eden makes a lot more sense to me now.
Mm-hmm.
That you can't stay in the garden. You can't stay in the garden, and it's not me being rude. It's not me being difficult. There are things that you need to learn on your own, and I will be here when you skin your knee. I promise. I'll be here to help heal that. But you can't stay here. You have to walk. You have to walk on your own, and it's not this tough love thing where you kick the wren out of the nest and hope it doesn't, bash its head, or dash your foot against a stone. Right? It's not that, but it is and it's lament.
Mhm.
I don't want her to leave, and I know. Look, I've been to college. It's not like, oh, thank God, she's leaving. It's not that at all. There is great lament, and there is sorrow, and there's lament in me saying, like, did I even prepare her for this?
Mhm.
It's like God giving them animal skins to, like, I've given you just enough. It's not going to protect you from sunburn, but like at least like it'll get you started.
Yeah.
So grace in motion as a parent, I think that makes great sense, and also as a pastor with my own people, because I'm very okay. So I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, and I know that'll be a shocker to you by the vast amounts of hand motions that I've already done in the 15 minutes we've been here. But when I start to break down, I disintegrate into a 1, where I have to have everything ordered around me at great expense to the people around me. So grace in motion to me means taking a deep breath and recognizing that things don't happen in a vacuum. And like, for example, this person who is angry at the closing hymn. Okay, so we don't have a pianist right now. We don't have a piano player or an organist because they're really, really hard to find. And someone came up to me just really upset that we've been doing everything contemporary lately. And the 1 in me who is disintegrated gets really angry at that and says, look, I'm doing the best I can. And these songs are great. And I don't know why you're so angry with this. Like, it's not like Jesus said you have to play Be Thou My Vision on the piano in order to get into the gates of heaven. The grace in motion is me taking a deep breath and recognizing that there's a pastoral concern behind that question.
Mhm.
What is going on? And let's not talk about me. Like, I hear you. Like, that's the language you're using to get my attention. I mean, it's like a toddler who like throws a ball and breaks a window. Like, they don't want to break the window, but they're like, Dad, pay attention. Listen to me. Like, I'm trying to get your attention. Right. And here's a parishioner saying, I'm trying to get your attention here. And I know that music is your language. So I hate the closing hymn. Now you got my attention. So, man, Frank, that's a good question. grace in motion to me is to take the time to seek the thing behind the thing. And that's a Rachel Billipsism that she taught me a long time ago. Always look for the thing behind the thing, and don't react to what's on the surface there. So that's my answer today. Tomorrow, when we re-record all of this,
When you write the new book, the next book.
yes, next week we're gonna have another book coming out on Flash Gordon and the gospel.
Look here, we can't afford that soundtrack, but we're gonna play it.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think that's a like when we think about like these stories, especially when we think about the Hebrew Bible stories and the complexities of them, and seeing how God like just didn't give up on them. Like to me, that is the best sign of grace that we can ever really have. And I always relate it back to the creation story where God literally, said, "Hey, if you eat from this, you'll die." Well, the Adam didn't do the thing. He didn't tell Eve that she should have not eaten from that. And really, in reality, like the real rule was like you ate from the tree of life, you die. God extends grace in a way that we wouldn't have been able to imagine in that moment. And we're all parents here. We all understand like there are times where like a child breaks a rule and at first you're angry, but then when you start to process why they did what they did, you start like, oh, I get it now. And I think that's where that grace in motion really comes into play. It's
I
that
love that.
taking that deep breath. And so I'm a 6 on the Enneagram. So like I have everything already all planned out. Everything's already laid out. Like everything's
You have the
already,
zombie apocalypse kit
yeah,
like ready to go.
I'm ready to go. Like I've got all the cables and everything I ever need for life. But yeah, I think one thing that parenting has taught me, especially my oldest will be a senior next year, and like as she's starting getting her independence, my big deep breath is reminding me that like, hey, in a year she may have her CNA and her high school diploma and be ready to be an adult. And like,
Oof.
holy crap,
Yeah.
there's a lot more work I need to do for her, like to get her ready. Like the 6 in me is like literally like, all right, so here's your list of things you need to know before you leave the house, but also know that when the door closes, you can't come back. So,
Mhm.
but I think when we think about grace in motion and even like the fear versus faith, it's
Mm.
how do we look at those situations and in the moment we react, but yet like if we like could slow it down or think about it more or take that deep breath and be willing to just, all right, um how am I going to respond, what's that going to say about my response, but also learning into you did the best you could with what you had in front of you.
Mm.
um and then like, oh, I know, like, we all like, I mean, I'm the middle child of 5. Like I know that my parents got to me and like, oh, well, we tried.
Mm.
Like he didn't die. And, like, it's okay. And I think that's the space that we hold is just being able to learn from where we're going and why these stories are important to us. And like, I was telling our prison ministry people this last week when we were getting our prison ministry backpacks ready. They were we'd all before I got here. They only gave like the New Testament and Psalms. And I was like, we got to give them the whole scriptures. Like they need to know the whole story. They need to see how God has been redeeming and loving throughout all of our history. And to me, that's important. Like it's important to give them a whole Bible versus a small portion of it.
Well, if you start giving people the Beatles' White Album, like if you start with that, like
Yeah,
it's just not going
yeah,
to make any like. Look, I love the White Album. I love
yeah.
the White Album. I love Abbey Road. I love Rebel Soul. But if you start at the White Album, there's a song track 3 of record 1. It's called Glass Onion, and it's I told you about the fool on the hill. He's living there still. I told you about Strawberry Fields. And like that song doesn't make sense unless you have the previous albums. When Jesus goes to the money changing tables and flips them up, and that doesn't make sense unless you have the Hebrew scriptures. Excellent point, Franks. Like, and the way that so you mentioned, taking a deep breath, and when a child misbehaves and breaks a rule, and how we have to remember the thing behind the thing. Even God does this. Now, this is in The Widening of God's Mercy from Richard Hayes, which is just it's great. And he lifts up a story of God changing God's own rules to better fit the context of God's own people. And like, I was not taught that growing up, right? Like I was taught God's law, it is there forever and ever, amen, unchanging. It's
Mhm.
a, it's a story of the daughters of a man who died in the wilderness. And at the time, according to God's law, only men could inherit. And they come to Moses. These daughters say, "Hey, our dad died in the wilderness. Like this is not our fault. Don't take our inheritance away. That's not right." And Moses doesn't say anything to them. Moses takes it directly to God, because I think like he was afraid of them and didn't know what to say, and so he takes it directly to God. And God says, "They're right." And thus says the Lord. The law was changed to fit the so. When, for example, when a child misbehaves, there's this, "Oh my God, I can't believe," but like, wait a minute, was my
Mhm.
rule right to begin with? Like, maybe the bending of the rules was important for me, because maybe the rule wasn't great to begin with. I mean, obviously, we have like, don't eat dirt and don't stick forks in sockets. Like the rules are important. Like, please hear me. You know,
I don't
don't
know
run in a
that
parking
the
lot.
don't stick fork in a socket is a learning experience the way I look at it for my family
It's
or for
called
my kids.
evolution.
Right.
That's
It's just
right.
natural selection taking
Yeah.
you out before you can,
What?
it's like the time I saved my daughter's life. I've saved my kid's life on more than one occasion. I saved my oldest. So I was carrying Anna Lee, my middle daughter. She was, I don't know, like 5 months old. Something. I was carrying her, and Isabel at the time was like 3, and she started running in a parking lot, and I saw a car coming. And there's a sermon in here somewhere, and I'm not saying that God is a God of tough love and God causes suffering. But I totally swept her legs out from under her like I learned on Karate Kid,
Yes.
in the late '80s. Like I'm holding Annie. I see her running into traffic, so I dead legged her. I just like whoop. I kicked her leg and she skinned her knee, but it also saved her life. So maybe there. It's like when Jacob wrestles with God on top of the mountain. Like maybe you leave with a limp. Maybe you leave with a limp, as a remembrance of your wrestling. But surely the presence of the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. you know, there's still grace, on the other end of that.
Right. And I think that's where grace comes in, right? God doesn't keep reminding Jacob that he, you know,
Yes,
right,
good
hurt the
point.
hip.
That's great.
Hopefully, you don't keep reminding your daughter, hey, you remember that time I saved your life?
Remember that?
You remember that time?
you know,
But I
um,
love that through line through this whole thing about, this if we only read this, right? If we only read Jesus, this doesn't make sense, right?
yeah,
Like
sure.
the way that Jesus responds to the disciples often rhymes so much with the grace and teaching moments that God uses and throughout the Hebrew Bible of that, okay, they've asked for a sign. They've asked me to explain the parable. Peter yet again has a question. Here we go. Right? There's so much grace in that to say, okay, here we go again, right? The way in which Jesus responds to the Syrophoenician woman, right? Okay,
Mm,
we can change and do this thing. And what I find fascinating throughout all of that is we tie stories and things like that together and how much they throughout Scripture work together and rhyme and just do the things. God hasn't called any of these people to bring life. Just go here. Do the
mm,
thing I've asked you to do. I'll take it from there, and never gives up on them. Right?
mm.
Never gives up on them. And for me, that culminates in Ezekiel's story, right? When he goes to preach to the dead, dry bones, his call is not to bring them back to life. His call is just to go and preach to the dead, dry
To
bones,
proclaim.
to
Hmm.
proclaim, and God breathes life into it. And for me, that's kind of that apex of the whole story here of God's just calling us to go. God's got it from there, right? And we see that through the imperfection of the journey.
Yeah, and that's actually, pointing to the next book,
Oh, look at
which is gonna which is gonna be on Romans,
that. Mm,
and there's this, um, when you say God doesn't give up on people, at the beginning of Romans, Paul says God gave them up to their passions, But there's something we should say, hey, wait a minute. That's not what I've read.
Mhm.
Because Paul is building an argument, and part of the unfortunate business of having the Bible in the vernacular is that people read Romans chapter 1 and think that that's the whole thing, like that's
Yeah.
the argument. Paul is building this argument because Paul eventually gets to nothing can separate you from the love of God. He doesn't start there. He has to build his way there because he's showing how these other gospels don't work at the beginning. And I'm not going to unpack all of that, but you're exactly right that God doesn't give up on God's people, even in the midst of exile. That doesn't mean that there's not a skinned knee
Right.
along the way or a cross between here and the empty tomb, right?
Hmm.
But God never gives up. And it's so counter when you're reading Romans 1. God gave them up. He just said, do whatever, and then blaming them after giving them permission to do whatever. Like, that doesn't make sense, and it's not supposed to, because Paul eventually says, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Because by the power of the Holy Spirit, you are literally mapped onto the person of Jesus, and you will be redeemed
Hmm.
under the second Adam. Or you have been. By hope you have been
Right.
redeemed. It's
Yeah.
good stuff, man. You're pretty
It is.
smart, Zach.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that
Yeah,
far.
but you don't have the thinking cap that Matt does.
Darn right.
Right.
I have to meet with my United Women in Faith, so I have to look smart today. So,
Mission
um,
accomplished.
yes.
done, right? No, and Paul does that so well, right? Like, when in Corinthians, right, when he's talking about faith, hope, and love, our wedding verse, right? Paul's not talking about fun, frilly, flowery things, right? He's calling the church out for being jerks, being mean to
Yes.
each other,
Yep.
and naming it, right? Like, I've missed the boat, and here's where it is.
And what does he say? Like it bears, it believes, it
Mm-hmm.
endures,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what I find fascinating about Paul is early Paul, First Thessalonians, Paul says we will be saved. In middle Paul, so Corinthians, we are being saved. And when we get to Romans, Paul finally says, or fall,
Yeah.
Paul finally says, by hope we have been saved. Finally, with Paul, it is a lived reality. The power of resurrection is now. He doesn't start there. He eventually gets there that nothing can separate you from the love of God. And I think, for example, as we look at this Abraham story, there is tension. Abraham falters. Abraham bargains and argues over the lives and the souls of Sodom and Gomorrah, but doesn't when God says sacrifice Isaac. Abraham's like, okay.
All right.
God's like, whoa, hold on, wait.
Just
Like,
kidding.
no, just a chapter ago,
Right.
you fought me over the souls of Sodom. Well, you failed that test. Because when it says Abraham tested God, or God tested Abraham,
Mhm.
and we assume that the test is sacrificing his son, could it be that the test was intervening in the midst of injustice?
Mhm.
And in that moment, Abraham failed, and God had to genuinely intervene at that point, knocking the knife out of his hand.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, yes, grace on the move, as Franks reminds us of the importance of when we're looking at this Abraham story. Grace is always on the move, and God never gives us up.
Mhm.
And my God, the amount of patience that God must have to continue to be our people through schism and division and boneheaded decisions, and still the dry bones come to life.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Thank God, right? And I love that you've pulled that out in this story, right? Because we read the fun parts and leave the messy parts behind, but it's the messy parts that make the story, right? Because
Yeah,
that's what rhymes with
real
us.
life.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's where we find ourselves, is in the messy parts. And yet there's too much theology out there saying, nah, you screw up, you skin your knee, you're out, right? Like, God
Right.
doesn't love you anymore. There's no grace for that, or you weren't perfect. And um, yeah, and we have a lot of people claiming Christianity today in a way that promotes that. That it's the way that we have said it is. Kind of like you said earlier, God does God does change and grow and build with us. And yet we have a lot of people out there saying, nope, it's this way, black and white, and there's no room for skin knees. in learning and growing in that way. And we gotta live into the messy parts, right? Because that's where we are.
And I love how you say the messy parts rhyme with it. What a great I don't know if I've ever heard you say that before. And maybe it's because I was sleeping
Probably.
in all the previous interviews that we've had.
100%.
I love that language of, I mean, look at the both of you. You must have been reading lately. Like
Not
Frank's
me.
is like the movement of grace, and Zach's like the messiness rhymes with us. Y'all are on. Y'all should write a book. Y'all are on.
We've been asking you to help,
Chat
like,
GPT,
let
baby.
us let you write a book all along, and I think we should do Matt Rawle and the Bearded Theologians tackle the Book of Revelation. Like, I really think it should be.
Let's
a
go,
book.
baby.
Like,
Let's go.
I think we could have
Sounds
fun
like
with
a
that.
nightmare.
Zach won't have fun with it because, well, he has West Texas trauma. But I think we can have an amazing book with Matt Rawle.
Well,
And, you know,
you'll have to fill out most of it because people have asked me that before. Like, what's your take on Revelation? And my take on Revelation is, if I see a 10-headed dragon with 7 horns coming up out of the Gulf of Mexico, I'm going to run like hell the other way. The whole time screaming, I thought you were a metaphor. I thought you were a metaphor. Oh my God. And that's my
tend to
take on
take-
Revelation.
Yeah, I tend to take Martin Luther's stance and be like, it can be over there.
It's yes. Like, oh my God, I thought you were just an image. The Whore of Babylon's a lot taller than I thought she was.
So Matt, we last time we had you on, we played the game romance novel or Song of Solomon. This time,
Which I passed. I
which
didn't
you
get
passed.
a single one
You
wrong.
passed. This
Which is just a
time we
wicked
thought we'd go a
window.
little bit deeper and
Oh.
tap into your theological education at Duke University, where they
Okay.
play mediocre, semi-decent basketball these days.
So close.
So close. But yet, we know that Coach K is an icon. I'm sure he
Yes.
has a statue at Duke. If not, he will soon enough.
Sure.
You probably have a Coach K statue somewhere in your house or somewhere. You probably have a picture somewhere because I'm told that's where people from Duke do.
It depends on what tier of giving you give to the Alumni Association. The size of the trophy they send you in the mail. Yeah.
So we need to sell
Very
more
good.
books so Matt can get a bigger Coach K
That's
trophy.
right.
That's the way this works.
That's right.
So we came up with a game. Actually, ChatGPT came up with a game for us called Coach K or Christ. And so we drafted, ChatGPT
gosh.
drafted for us some sayings from Jesus pulled from the Bible and some sayings from Coach K. We'll let you decide which one is which. Okay. They're not that hard. Like, if you can't
I don't
get
know,
these
man.
right,
Like, I'm really nervous about this because I hope I know this better than young adult romance fiction. Like, I was stupid good at that last game. When you said we're going to do a deeper dive this time, it's like, please don't.
Please don't.
Oh no, these are fairly
We'll see.
simple.
Okay, we'll see.
I mean, we'll give you the first one right here. Okay.
I mean, Coach K is kind of divinity.
He
He's
is.
kind of divine, right?
I have read few of his books. I will admit I did.
All right, well, let's see. Let's see.
Okay, so here's the first one.
Okay.
The greatest among you will be your servant.
Okay. Good. Okay. I'm gonna go with Jesus on this one.
You are correct.
Whew.
Okay,
That's good.
so here we go again.
Okay.
The biggest thing is to make sure the voices inside your head are louder than the voices outside.
Now, if we were dealing with the Gerasene demoniac, like maybe that could have been said, but I'm going to go with Coach K on that one.
Yeah.
2 for
Zach,
2. Let's
Zach,
go.
do you have the list?
I do have the list.
Okay. Do you want to ask one?
Full disclosure. I don't know who Coach K is. I know. Sorry. I have failed someone somewhere.
Oh my.
Yep. Sorry about that. So with that in mind, I don't know who said it. Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life doesn't consist in an abundance of possessions.
So Coach K is a Catholic. So this could have been something that Coach K said, but I'm going to go with Jesus on this one too.
That was Jesus. That was Jesus.
That's good.
He could also be talking about the possession of the basketball and not an abundance of possessions. So
Could be. I mean, look, on one of the first Sundays of the year when we gather in the Duke Chapel, they present the dean of the chapel a basketball, right? So there's a full, it's important when we talk about idol worship to name it and claim it.
Just questions.
To just say it out loud.
Speaking of some things Jesus said.
It's good. Let's. I'm thankful that Duke does not ignore the apostasy that actually pays for my scholarship.
Yes.
So
that's fair.
I mean,
that's fair. I like it. I got another one. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me.
Sounds awfully like a concession speech of the Final Four, but also Jesus again.
Also Jesus
in
again.
The Gospel
yes.
of John. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh,
I knew that. I actually knew that.
I was like, he actually did write
points for the gospel.
I wrote a book on that one.
Yeah. So
that's funny.
When you're part of a team, you sacrifice. It's not about you anymore.
Yeah. Now, if this game had been Thomas, the doubting Thomas, Thomas the twin, or Coach K, this might be harder. But Coach K said that.
Yeah. It was actually Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas.
That would be so rich.
Right?
We should write that down.
Should have gone to Isla.
Next. That's the Mile High School. That's what we called it.
So we went to see Jesus. So,
right.
So we'll leave it at that. You definitely scored a perfect score. You get to keep your Duke hat,
Sweet.
and your Duke
and my credentials
and your credentials and all that good stuff. And so
we should probably end this podcast before I lose said credentials.
Before you have to write another admin.
Yes, that's right.
To regain your credentials.
So where can they find the book?
Yeah, no, thank you. And as of this recording, it releases in 4 days. So April 15th, excuse me, 5 days. April 15th, it will be wherever fine books are sold. All right. So abingdonpress.com, Cokesbury.com. You can find everything at mattrawle.com, MATTRAWLE.com, for all of your faith over fear needs. You can find it there. And it's a quick read, friends. It's 4 chapters. It's a relatively short book. So everyone will have time to pick it up and put it down and be blessed by it.
Thanks for being on.
Always.
For our listeners, don't be afraid to go pick up Matt's book. Grab a couple of people and have them buy it, and then also don't forget to write a review for it. That's how it helps our authors get the stuff out. So,
and Franks, you just earned a royalty by saying, "Don't be afraid to pick this book up." Like the synergy of that phrase is incredible. Well done, sir. That's good.
I'll do what I can. Zach, you got anything to close before we close this up?
No, thanks, Matt. Thanks for being on. It's always a blast.
Sure,
we appreciate walking through the Bible and Scripture and the books that you write. I always appreciate our conversations. That's if people at home want to know what it's like when pastors sit down and have a conversation, it's a lot of this.
Here it is. Here it is.
It's a lot of banter and good times. So we appreciate your authenticity and just being present with us.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
So check us out at beardedtheologians.com. We'll have how to get Matt's books in the show notes, and feel free to pick several up. And then listeners, thank you for listening. So for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Guys, and like this video, and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.